We have finally arrived at Nintendo's official reveal of its next hardware, Nintendo Switch 2. So longed for by the most ardent fans of the Big N, so enormously requested by that segment of the public that over the years has become gangrenous on that technical structure that had become archaic for multi-platform games, and sometimes even for some first parties. But was this really the best method or way to present this product to buyers? I don't think so. And in this video, I list the 5 reasons why Nintendo Switch 2 represents a huge commercial error by Nintendo. 1. The price of Switch 2 games. We all know very well by now how Nintendo has made the high end of its software a trademark, similarly to what happens with Apple-branded products. However, here we are faced with a real legalized robbery. Since not only have we gone from 70 euros for a game to the day one of Nintendo Switch, but we have arrived directly at 90 euros for a single physical game, which is perhaps the most negative precedent set by Nintendo in recent years. Even worse than the most dire predictions that gave 80 euros as a standard price for PS5 and Xbox Series X games. With this move, Nintendo has not only precluded a large portion of consumers who obviously will not be able to afford this product on day one, but has also effectively halved its potential proprietary software revenue in the long term, leading consumers to wait for offers from private stores rather than spend so much on products that, although quality, certainly cannot justify this overall monetary value. 2. Nintendo Chat Voice. With a presentation of over 10 minutes on this new feature, Nintendo clearly wants to meet the needs of today's streamer gamers. But in this plan, he did not consider how this technology will not allow to have a quality sufficient to justify the expense for a Nintendo camera with non-excellent technical qualities to an audio and video transmission totally dependent on the Wi-Fi connections of the individual players called, with clear defects and problems related to it also seen live, and an obligation of a subscription to Nintendo Switch Online to use a standard function button of each Switch 2 console, which will automatically become useless when we do not have a subscription to Nintendo Switch Online. 3. Exclusive paid upgrades. Similarly to what happened with the transition of games from S4, where if the latter had technical and graphic improvements, they would have required a fee of 10 euros extra to be played on the new console. Nintendo operates a similar strategy between Switch 1 games with Switch 2. Since we would have to shell out an additional 20 or maybe 30 euros to play acclaimed games such as Zelda Tears of the Kingdom or Kirby and the Lost Land on the new Nintendo Switch 2. So is there backwards compatibility for Nintendo Switch 1 games on Switch 2? Yes, but only on selected titles, since for a good portion of them, it will be necessary to shell out more money in case we want to play them on the new console. And regardless of whether these bring new content with the Switch 2 versions or not. In fact, the Kirby game will have an exclusive DLC for Switch 2, while Zelda will not have substantially any new content, but you will have to pay for it anyway. 4. Games not always present on a game card. Nintendo's new strategy on games, which is going to attack strongly on the wallets of gamers, does not stop at the price. Exactly. Since many of today's games have a capacity much greater than a classic Nintendo Switch card, Nintendo has decided to create fake game cards with only an access key inside. You understood correctly. A very banal access key that will allow you to download the game online on your console, on your account. This implies not only that you will have to arm yourself with a good dose of patience to download games weighing over 100 GB on a console with a basic memory of 256 GB waiting hours before completing, but also that once the key has been redeemed, the game cannot longer be resold, since the access key has already been used by another user. With this move, Nintendo closes the doors to the used market forever. 5. Oppressive conservative strategies. During the presentation, they also emphasized how these exclusive games, such as Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World, are Switch 2 exclusives. But once seen, they do not seem to shout about the technical miracle that one would expect from a new generation. On the contrary, I am willing to bet that these games could easily run on Switch 1, but that they will only be used as a springboard to justify the purchase of the console that, moreover, does not shine on the technical side of what is proposed, at a price of €470. And adding the joke of the backwards compatibility of Nintendo GameCube games only for those who are subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online too, which will therefore be a different subscription from Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo is trying to keep a foot in two stirrups. Trying to drag old Switch buyers along and entice them with clearly basic games for Switch 2. A rather questionable strategy, also in light of the countless portings prepared to outline a launch lineup that, without them, would be rather sterile. These are the 5 reasons that have made Nintendo Switch 2 a disappointment for many gamers around the world, and not just for lovers of the big N. Preparing the market with precedents that will inevitably impact the entire industry, and unfortunately not for the better. And here I say goodbye. If you liked the video or if it was useful to you, comment, leave a like, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video. Good afternoon, always here on Frontier Class Gamer.